If you like your Obamacare, you can keep your Obamacare. Kind of, sort of, maybe. Yet it's been years in the making, but on Monday, Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan revealed his Obamacare repeal and replace bill, which neither repeals nor replaces Obamacare, except for where it does. I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and if you're confused, well, then this right angle is going to clear things up for you. I hope. Gents, Senator Rand Paul calls Paul Ryan's bill Obamacare Lite and says he won't vote for it. And Senator Mike Lee says this is not the Obamacare repeal bill we've been waiting for. And the GOP can only afford to lose 2 votes, just 2, if this thing is going to clear the Senate. Longtime Obamacare critic Avik Roy says the House GOP's Obamacare replacement will make coverage unaffordable for millions and create a new poverty trap for people who won't be able to afford to earn more money and still keep their coverage. Conservative columnist Philip Klein wrote that the plan signals that liberalism has already won. Free market groups, Americans for Prosperity, Freedom Works, Club for Growth, and Heritage Action all came out against it immediately, and even supporters of the bill admit that it merely replaces one kind of tax subsidy with another kind of tax subsidy. Bill, do you think the Republicans would be smarter just waiting for Obamacare to collapse and instead of creating a new mess that people are going to hate just as much as the old mess?
The only thing I can count on than people being no stupider than Republicans or people being no more cowardly than Republicans. They take the cake in both categories. This is stupid and it's cowardly. I don't know what it's going to take for these idiots, and Paul Ryan should know better because he's been. I remember when he was a Tea Party darling with his budget plan, and all the rest of it. Look, it's pretty simple, really. Number one, is the government going to mandate that you have to buy health care? Yes or no? Number two, are they going to be determining which plans are available in cooperation with the insurance companies? Yes or no? And number three, is competition going to be allowed into this quagmire, this aneurysm of overlapping responsibilities, standing armies of people with their own special interests? Yes or no? And if it doesn't do those things, then it's not a repeal and it's not a replace, which is what we have been sending people to Washington to do since 2010. We can't do anything about it. They have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Okay, here's the House. That's the first one we can flip. Here's the Senate. Here's the presidency. And now you still won't do it? Why? Why? I know why. Because you're cowards. You're worried about people saying, you're going to throw poor people out on the street. Well, come up with a plan for coming up with money to pay private insurance companies for poor people. And if you get out of the way, insurance rates will fall so low that it will cost us far, far less than this catastrophe is costing us. I'll tell you something. If they do not repeal this business, if they do not put it in the ground dead, then the Democrats are going to be, they're just going to roll in November of 2018, because then we will realize that these guys were never, ever serious about it, ever. Not one of them were ever serious about doing this, that the whole thing was just to gin up the base so they could get their benefits and their perks. And I'm over it, Steve. I'm really, really over it. Scott pointed out that these guys voted to pass a bill when Obama was president because they knew that it couldn't possibly be put into law because Obama would veto it. That's just political cowardice and it's pandering. And I wish I could tell you I expected better, but I don't.
Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Before we do, there is a little bit of good news in there. The House bill does eliminate the unconstitutional individual mandate and gets rid of Obamacare's taxes, albeit slowly, phasing them out between 2020 and 2025. President Trump, he tweeted this morning on Tuesday, "Don't worry, getting rid of state lines, which will promote competition, will be in phase 2 and 3 of healthcare rollout." And in fact, repeal and replace was probably always going to be a 3-step process at least. Scott, the question, I guess, is how are we ever going to get to the second phase when Ryan is having trouble, big trouble, just selling this bill to Republicans?
Listen, the only reason we have anything that we need to repeal and replace is because the Obama administration and the Democrat leadership in Congress did not fail to seize the moment when they had all the levers of power.
That's exactly right.
And right now, the Republican Party nominally has all the levers of power. And if they start doing a phased approach, they're not going to make it through the next midterm election. In fact, because if they take a phased approach, then there will be no appreciable difference between Obamacare. This is just a new version of Obamacare. They're not actually getting rid of Obamacare. They're changing how it works a little bit. Some of the changes might be good. You might say, well, that's a step in the right direction. But the problem is that there's no distinction. Nobody is going to look at this and go, wow, things are so much better now that the Republicans are in charge. And so there's no reason to elect a Republican to Congress at the midterm elections, and therefore we will never have a phased approach. So they really need to get a spine. But the problem is, as Bill pointed out, that there are enough Republicans in Congress. It's not the Democrats' fault in this thing. There are enough Republicans in Congress who were never serious about repealing and replacing Obamacare. They just said it when they knew they couldn't have an impact on it. And now when they can have an impact on it, now they're getting cold feet. Now they're backing away. And we're saying, well, we don't have a mandate anymore, but we will have inducements. There will be penalties if you allow your insurance to lapse. They're still going to keep your coverage will exist with your parents until you're 26 years old. And several of the other provisions of Obamacare that because they're popular. And I think that that's the heart of Republicans' problem. I understand politics is a popularity business in many respects, but Republicans are supposed to be the party of principle. And when you lose your grasp on the fact that good principles are popular, then you lose everything.
I just want to add, because I've never thought of it before. But if it turns out that things like being on your insurance policy, your parents' insurance policy till you're 26 are popular, then if they're that popular, private insurance agencies in desperate competition with each other will offer that option and they're going to find out who can do it at the lowest price. And if you don't happen to be 26 years old or have parents or have kids that are not kids, they're still 26, then you don't have to buy this nonsense.
Well, and Bill, the other thing that they're keeping on the list of keep items is the requirements on insurance companies that certain coverages must be provided. I think there's a list of like 10 different kinds of coverages that must be provided in every insurance policy, including maternity coverage. You must buy maternity coverage.
It's just insane.
Oh, Lord. Guys, the short version is the Democrats screwed us. They really screwed us all back in 2010, and we can't depend on the Republicans to undo it. And look, Obamacare's biggest problem is the regulatory burden, the sheer number of paperwork requirements it places on doctors. ABC News reported a while back that doctors spend 48% of their time doing paperwork, and that's largely due to mandates imposed by Medicaid and Obamacare. Let me put this in perspective. Let me tell you a personal story. My grandfather had a small business back in St. Louis, a steel service center, and he estimated that he spent about 30% of his time talking to lawyers, just trying to stay inside the laws as they were back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And of course, it's grown since then. And I asked him, well, what would you be doing if you weren't spending 30% of your time talking to lawyers? And he said, well, I'd either have 30% more free time or my business would be 30% bigger. And I know this man, he would not have gone with the 30% more free time. So that's 30% more business. That's 30% more money in his pocket. That's 30% more employees going home with a paycheck every week that never happen. And you multiply that across business after business after business from one city to one state to another all across the country. And Obamacare is even worse. It's a 50% tax on health care. We pay for twice as much health care as we actually get. And the current GOP plan does absolutely nothing to unravel that burden. What a waste. I would say I can't believe it, but I can absolutely believe it. And that's the right angle on the Obamacare not repeal and not replace, brought to you by the paying members of BillWhittle.com. They keep us on the air. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.